Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm the City Witch. So today's video is going to be about how to make black salt. Now you're going to need an awful lot of ash for this, so that's why I wanted to mention this at the beginning of the video before I actually show you how to make it. Now this is my bowl full of ash. Now obviously this is pretty full and I actually have quite a lot more in stock as well. So what I would say when you're thinking about using your ash to make any kind of black salt is firstly consider the ash and where it came from. So obviously this came from a barbecue in my garden, and we actually have quite a huge fire pit which we can burn marshmallows and things on, which is quite lovely on a dark night. And we don't put anything in it, so it's all non-toxic stuff. It's obviously got lots of positive energy surrounding it because we're enjoying the atmosphere of the fire and we are burning marshmallows, so we're all having a good time. And what I do is I save the ash from it the next morning and I pop it into a ritual bowl like this. So this is my ritual bowl and it has the triple goddess on it in all her various forms. And I sit this on my altar and I give it a cleanse. Now, by cleansing it, all I'm doing is I'm just neutralizing the energies of the ash, getting it ready to become black salt. Now, if you don't have a fire pit in your garden or any way to have a large quantity of ash saved up, there are two other things that you can consider. So you can buy charcoal discs. Now, charcoal discs can be found online really easily for about £5 for a few packets. You can find them in lots of new age stores these days, and actually some supermarkets sell them as well, along with lighters and matches. So just keep an eye out for them. But by having those, what you can do is set them obviously on a fireproof dish. So if you don't have a special ritual one like I do, you can use a pan that you'd normally put in the oven because they're usually fireproof. You can pop it on that. Now they take a little bit of time to light, so just to warn you, keep at it and just mind your fingers because they spark a little bit when you first light them. But once they're lit, they burn pretty quickly. And then what you're going to want to do is maybe not have them anywhere near a fire alarm. I don't want anyone saying they'd set their fire alarms off, so I'd probably pop it outside on your doorstep or something and let it burn away. And then once it's completely burned through and cooled down, which is going to take a further, I'd say 20 minutes to half an hour for it to cool completely, save the ash from it, and then maybe you might want to burn a few of these, by the way, so I'd say 2 or 3 would do for a mixture. Let them all cool down and pop them in a bowl like this and crush them up so you end up with a fine powder like that. Now that's suitable for your ash. Another option is you can save ash from incense sticks. So if you don't have a barbecue and you don't have the little coals I mentioned to burn, you can just save the incense. So think about the incense that you're using and also about what you're using it for. So I wouldn't use incense, for example, from any spell working or rituals. I would stick to incense that you've only burned for the pure pleasure of the fragrance in your home, and then save the ash. I also wouldn't, I'd think about the same thing for charcoal discs as well. I wouldn't really use any of the ash from a charcoal disc that's been used in a ritual working because again, it's incorporating the energies, and yes, you could probably cleanse it like I did with this, but I only cleansed this because it had been outside amongst all the elements and obviously surrounded by people, not because I'd use it in ritual working. And if I'd used it in a ritual working, it would be imbued with that energy, so cleansing it probably wouldn't work anyway. It's the same reason why I don't use wax that's left over from spell working. I always bin it, I don't melt it and reuse it, because obviously I've used it in a spell working, I've carved sigils into it, I've anointed it with a certain oil, and I can't get rid of any of that because it's in the wax itself, because I've imbued it with those energies. So just something to think about, guys. But you're going to need a lot of ash, and so I'd probably start storing it up and keep it, and then when you've got enough, so a bowl full like this, that's when you know you've got enough to make your mixture. So the second half of this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make black salt. So I hope you enjoy it, guys, and I'll see you in a minute. Bye. Hey guys, so in today's video we're going to be making black salt. So this is an example of one that I've made before. Now you'll notice in this one there's actually some bark and herbs in it. So that's because this one's dedicated to a goddess that I work with known as Hecate, and this is the bottle I keep it in for her. Now I'm not going to be teaching you how to make Hecate black salt today, but I am going to be teaching you how to make general black salt, and I'm going to show you some examples of the different ways that you can make it as well. So what you're going to need is an empty bowl like this. Now, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something you don't mind getting a bit grubby. So what I've done is I've given this a good clean out, and I've given it a cleanse with some Palo Santos so that it's neutral energy. You're going to need a way to stir and mix your ingredients. You're going to need a large amount of ash, and then you're going to need some salt, and that's mine. Now you can use any type of salt, but I'm choosing to use Epsom salt. Epsom salt is one of my favourite types of salt to work with, but what I would say is research the energies of the salts that you're interested in using and check are the ones you want to use. If you were making some black salt but you wanted to incorporate some loving energy, then I'd perhaps use Himalayan pink salt and mix that. Obviously it's going to change the colour to a greyish black, but that's fine. You know the energies underneath that comes from a place of love, so that's fine as well. So just research your salts and choose the one that you want to work with. So starting with your bowl, what I would do first is put some salt in there. Now I always start with the salt first, and the reason I do that is because I want to do a ratio and make sure I'm controlling how much salt I'm going to be using. And then I next put in the ash. Now I always put 1 spoonful of ash to 2 of the salt to begin with, and what I'm doing there is I'm making sure it mixes well so I'm not wasting everything, and then I'm also controlling how dark I want it to go. Now gonna remove that big chunk there. So as you can see there, that gets pretty dark when it wants to. I mean, obviously this is a black bowl, so it doesn't look as dark on the picture, but it is pretty dark, guys. Now, if you wanted this to go darker, I would add some fresh black herbs into there, and I would add some pepper as well, and that's another good way to make this go dark. Another way you can make this go dark is to add a tiny couple of drops of water in there as well, and that will make it go dark as well, and then let it dry. Now, one of the things that I mentioned to you earlier was I make Hecate salt. Now, how I do that is I dedicate some certain herbs that the goddess is known to like as an offering, and I add them into my salts. So if you're working with someone like Aphrodite, for an example, obviously rose petals is a good offering to her, so you could crumble some of them up in your mortar and pestle, so they're quite small pieces, mix them into that, and then hold your hands over the top of your bowl and dedicate the salt to that particular goddess by saying a little prayer. So it's completely up to you. Now, one of the ingredients I do like to include in my mixture is white willow bark. The reason I like to include this is because it's good protection for the home against evil, and when mixed with sandalwood on charcoal, it actually conjures spirits and is used for releasing and letting go. So because black salt is really good for protection purposes, removing hexes and curses and protection against evil of all kinds, when adding sandalwood to this and mixing it in, you're increasing the qualities of it as well. So it's a good idea to think about including some sandalwood. Now, I don't actually have any sandalwood to mix into this at the moment, and I actually want this to be just black salt. So I'm not going to be mixing any extra ingredients in this today, but it is always an option for you guys. So I'm going to show you a couple of other examples of how I've made black salts. So this is one of them. So let me flip that over. So you can actually see this is really dark. I mean, that is super dark. How I did this one, and actually a couple of the others, so I'll show you these. So there's that one as well, which is my love mix. And then I've got this one as well. And actually I don't have a lot of this one left, but this one is my money and luck magic salt. So what I did when I made these was I used food dyes. Now this was back in my youth when I was practicing witchcraft, and I was trying to learn different ways that I could do this. And obviously I didn't have access to a lot of knowledge back then, so I was unaware of how you actually make black salt by using ash. So I actually ended up using food dyes. Now there's a couple of points here. Firstly, food dyes are obviously completely safe. They're edible. So you know they're safe to burn, you know they're safe to ingest, and you know you can bathe in them with no problem. So that's another reason I really liked using them. But I made a couple of errors. So I'm going to try and advise you on how I did these so you don't make any errors. So the first thing is 1 drop is enough, guys. So when you're making your mixture, you have your salt in your bowl, add in the herbs that you want. So for me, for love, was rose petals, it was a little bit of jasmine buds, And yeah, so a couple of oils as well. I think I added in rose oil into this one. I mixed that to the salt first, and then I added a couple of drops of pink and red food dye. Now, the mistake I made was the bowl was probably no bigger than this, and I actually filled it, and then I added in a couple of drops of the oils. I think it was about 2 to 3 of each of the oils, and then I added as well the food dye. So you can imagine how the salt at that point is starting to get quite wet. So what ended up happening was it became quite soggy, and the salt obviously wasn't melting because of the oil, so it was counteracting the food dyes. But what was happening was it was getting so wet and squidgy that when I popped it in this bottle, it actually became hard. And actually, if I hold it upside down like that, can you see how that's not moving, guys? I actually have to bang this on counters to get it to separate, and then use a spoon to like filter it out a little bit to get it to come out. But I'm refusing to make a new batch until I use all of this, because otherwise it's a waste. But the advice I have for you is use literally 1 drop of the oil or 1 drop of the food colour that you choose per big bowl of salt, and then mix. And then if you think it looks too pale, please don't add more, just keep mixing. And actually it should get darker the more you mix, not lighter. And then stop, and then let the salt air dry for about a day. And what this will do, this will give you a chance to see if it's hardening up, and you can keep going back to it every couple of hours and giving it a stir and a mix, making sure it's not dry and hard. And when you know it's actually feeling quite dry in your hands, it's not leaving dye on your fingers, that's when I'd add it to a jar like this and label it up. So differences with these is quite easy. Obviously that one had rose oil in it, had pink and red dye in it, and some flowers that associated with love. For this one, I didn't add any herbs in it at all. I literally just used black food dye. And again, I used a little bit too much, so just be wary of that. And then this one was green, and actually I added gold sparkles to that as well for some look and sort of wealth aspect, I suppose. And then all I did was add them in these pretty colourful bottles. This one was green. I made sure they were all nice corks, and then I added some decoration to them as well to make them feel magical. And then I magically charged them on my altar, and I blessed them as well in the name of certain deities that actually took care of these aspects. So this one I obviously blessed with Aphrodite because she's a goddess of love. This one I blessed in the name of Hades. And then this one was Fortuna. So I incorporated certain energies into these that I thought would be good and charged them on my altar. So that's all I did for those guys. So that's literally it. That's just how you make black salt. So if you want to get creative, guys. See if you can make some with lots of different food colorings like I did with these. See if you can add some herbs into it and dedicate it to your deity. That's completely fine as well. And as I say, that's all there is to it really. And then what I would do is I would probably leave this on my altar to charge with certain energies. I would surround it with some candles, some positive energy, and I would concentrate on adding in some energies that I want this to be. So you're sort of tuning it to what you want it to do. And then I would bottle this up and label it, and it will last you actually until it completely runs out. There's no real time limit on how long you can use salt for, because obviously they're self-cleansing. So, and that's it, guys. That's just how you make it. So feel free to share this video, and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.